He didn't bark, he didn't whine, he didn't look up. He just
It's okay,
lay
Leo.
there,
I'm gonna get you out of
pressed
here.
so tightly against the base of the oak tree, it looked like he was trying to disappear into the bark itself. If Harper hadn't been jogging with her earbuds half out, if she hadn't paused to tie her shoelace right near the trail curve, she never would have noticed him. At first she thought it was a pile of old clothes, a dark shape, motionless in the shade. But something glinted, maybe the angle of the sun, maybe the glint of nylon stretched too tight. She squinted, took a step closer, then two. That's when she saw the rope. Thick, rough, twisted in ways that no rope should ever be on something living. It cinched around the puppy's neck, belly, back legs, so tight she could see where fur had worn away and raw skin had surfaced. His body was a patchwork of black and tan, but dulled, as if the colors had given up. And above him, taped to the tree with a strip of clear packing tape, fluttered a note. A torn piece of notebook paper, creased and wet around the corners. Harper couldn't read the words yet. Her eyes were stuck on his. They weren't frightened. They were waiting. "Oh, God!" she breathed, dropping to her knees. Hey there, baby!" The puppy didn't move. Not even a flinch. His breathing was shallow, ribs lifting in barely there motion. Harper could see the crust of dried mud near his paws, the tremble in his limbs that looked more like exhaustion than fear. She reached for the knot, fingers fumbling. Whoever tied it had used force. The rope dug in so deeply that her fingers slipped on the first try. She tried again. No use. The knot was tight, slick with dirt and saliva, and clearly meant to hold. She didn't have scissors, no keys, not even a broken twig nearby sharp enough to do anything. Her hands kept shaking. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. She was alone on the trail, no one else in sight. Come on. She muttered through clenched teeth, yanking again. The dog whimpered, barely audible, like sound was something he'd learned to stop making. She jerked her hands back immediately, shame burning in her palms. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her breath hitched. She looked around. Nothing. No backpack, no bowl. Just the rope, the tree, the note. The note. She stood, chest heaving, and peeled it off carefully. The marker ink was smudged, but still readable. "His name is Leo. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people." It felt like a gut punch. Harper stared at it for a second too long, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Footsteps, a figure approaching. A jogger rounded the corner, young guy, fit, headphones in. He slowed, caught sight of her kneeling beside the tree, did a double take. "You okay?" he asked, pulling out an earbud. "There's a dog," she said, voice cracking. He's tied up. I can't get the rope off. Do you have a knife?" He blinked, looked down at Leo, pulled out his phone. Damn, that's rough. She watched him lift the phone, snap a picture. Then, just like that, he turned and jogged off. She stared after him, stunned. "You didn't even ask if I needed help." The anger came fast, hot and sharp and steady. She yanked her phone from her armband and called the San Elmo Animal Rescue Hotline, gave the location, gave her name. "My name is Harper Dawson," she said, trying to keep her voice even. "Please hurry, he's barely breathing. We're dispatching someone now." The voice on the other end replied, "Stay with him if you can." She didn't move from the grass, just sat a few feet away, her eyes never leaving Leo's. Minutes passed like hours. He didn't sleep. He didn't blink much. He just watched her, as if trying to memorize the shape of her face in case she left too. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "You're not just a note on a tree, okay? You matter. You hear me?" Leo's eyes flickered, a twitch in his ears. It wasn't much, but it was something. The van pulled up with the squeak of tires on gravel. A woman in uniform stepped out. mid-40s, auburn braid, face sun-worn but kind. "You Harper?" Harper nodded and stood. "He's right there. The rope. God, it's awful." The woman crouched beside the dog, pulled a slim blade from her belt pack, and worked in silence. Her fingers were quick but careful. She didn't try to pet him, just slid the blade under each knot, one by one. When the last strand fell, Leo sagged to the ground like the tension had been the only thing holding him upright. "No open wounds," the woman said softly. "Just severe constriction marks and dehydration. We can work with that." Harper stepped forward again, crouched low, palm open. "You're okay now." For the first time, Leo shifted, leaned ever so slightly into her hand. "He let me touch him," she whispered. The woman nodded. "They know. The good ones always know." She slipped a soft slip lead around Leo's neck. No resistance, just that same quiet surrender. "You want to ride with him?" she asked. "Yes." Harper's answer came before the question finished. "I don't want him thinking I walked away." They helped Leo into the van. Harper climbed in beside him. As the engine started, the puppy leaned forward, rested his head gently on her lap. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just placed a hand lightly on his back and whispered, "I see you." And for the first time that day, Leo closed his eyes. Harper Dawson hadn't planned to stop running that morning. It was supposed to be her escape, like every other Tuesday. 3 miles through the east side of San Elmo Park, earbuds in, mind out. But now she was sitting in damp grass beside a broken puppy, watching the way his chest rose and fell like he was breathing on borrowed time. Her name had barely left her lips when she called animal rescue, but the moment she said it, it felt like a line had been crossed. This wasn't just a call, this was a beginning. Harper was 34, landscape designer, self-employed, highly reviewed, and famously meticulous. She'd made her life as structured as her terraced gardens, clean lines, measured layers, soft lighting. And she'd built it that way on purpose. Ever since her mother died 3 years ago, Harper had pulled back from anything unpredictable. No roommates, no parties, no pets, especially not pets. Pets die. Pets leave. So did people. But that rule seemed meaningless now, because she couldn't walk away, not from Leo. She watched as he lay curled against the base of the oak, rope remnants still clinging to his side, body trembling in the quiet. He didn't cry. He didn't flinch. It was like his pain had taken root and bloomed into something silent. Harper scooted closer, not touching, just near enough that he could sense her presence if he wanted to. "I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered. "You can rest. I've got you." She glanced at her phone. 10 minutes since the call, maybe 12. She didn't care. Her heart was beating too fast to track time. A group of teens passed by on the far trail. One of them stopped, looked in her direction, then nudged the other. They laughed. Harper wasn't sure why. Maybe she looked ridiculous, crouched in the dirt, talking to a dog who wouldn't even look back. She didn't care about that either. Instead, she looked again at the note. "His name is Leo. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people." She stared at the last sentence. He loves people. What kind of person reads that, ties up a puppy and walks away? Her jaw clenched. She could still feel the heat from earlier, the helpless fury at the jogger who took a photo and ran off. Like Leo was just another sad thing in a sad world worth sharing, but not fixing. That wasn't Harper. Or maybe it hadn't been. Until now. The van pulled up faster than she expected. White county seal on the side. The driver's door opened and the woman, Lara, according to her name badge, stepped out with the ease of someone who'd done this before. "You the caller?" "Yeah, Harper Dawson Lara took one look at Leo and sighed, pulling on gloves. This one's been here a while. Harper didn't ask how she could tell. The rope, the sunken eyes, the quiet. Those were all the answers she needed. But what Lara said next knocked something loose inside her. This kind, they wait. What do you mean? They wait for someone to come back, even when they've been abandoned. They'll wait until their body can't anymore. Harper swallowed hard. Lara worked efficiently. The blade slipped under the rope without grazing the skin. Harper noticed the way Leo didn't resist, didn't even move. He let it happen, like he'd already given up deciding who meant safety and who meant harm. When the rope finally gave, Lara stepped back. Leo didn't run, didn't even try to stand. He just sank into the grass, like the tree was the only thing holding him upright. Lara looked at Harper. He trusts you. That's rare, this early. Harper wasn't sure how to respond. Trust was something she hadn't thought about in a long time. Not in any real way. She barely let people into her own home. Yet here was this dog, raw and wounded, putting his weight into her shadow. "Can I ride with him?" she asked. "Sure, if it'll help him settle." It wasn't for him. It was for her, but she nodded. The ride to the shelter was quiet. Leo's head rested on Harper's thigh, warm and heavy. He still hadn't barked, still hadn't made a sound, but when they hit a bump in the road, his paw slid over her foot like a reflex. That simple gesture, barely anything, stopped her breath for a second. When they arrived, the shelter's front desk buzzed with motion. Voices, metal doors, barking in the back. Harper stayed close as they brought Leo in through the side. One of the techs, a young guy in scrubs with tired eyes, asked, "What's his name?" "Leo," Harper said. They nodded, wrote it down. "He'll need a health assessment and probably isolation until we confirm vaccine status." The words made sense. The logic did too. But as they gently lifted Leo onto a small bed in the intake room, Harper felt something inside her unravel. Not panic, not sadness, separation. She crouched next to him, ignoring the looks from the staff. "I'll come back," she said softly, stroking his side. "This isn't over." For a second, Leo opened his eyes, met hers. It wasn't pleading. It was permission. She didn't know what she was doing or why it mattered so much. But as she stepped out of the intake room, one thought repeated louder than the rest. You don't walk away from the ones who don't ask to be left. And Harper Dawson, despite all her careful planning, her quiet life, her fear of messy attachments, had just crossed the line she once swore she'd never go near. She had stayed, and something about that felt terrifyingly right. The fluorescent lights in the intake room buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow over everything. The metal table, the grey floor tiles, the bundle of medical wraps, and Leo. Harper stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed tightly, trying not to let her chest cave in. Leo didn't resist when the vet techs approached. He didn't snap, didn't growl, didn't even shift. It was like he didn't expect kindness. Like stillness was the only language he had left. The rope had left raw, dark indentations on his legs and belly. Under his fur, the skin looked angry, deep red in some places, blackened in others. His hind leg was twisted slightly, not broken, but frozen into an unnatural bend. Probably from lying in one position too long. Harper thought. Lara, the same officer from earlier, was back at his side now, gloved up, crouched with a short medical blade in hand. "I've seen worse," she said quietly, not looking at Harper, but not by much. Harper didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. The first slice was slow. Lara slipped the blade between the rope and Leo's fur, careful not to touch the skin. The rope resisted, frayed and sticky, like it had absorbed everything, dirt, sweat, fear. She made another cut, then another. Leo stayed still, until the final loop around his midsection gave way. Then, almost imperceptibly, he exhaled. It wasn't a sigh, not quite, but it was the closest thing Harper had heard to peace since she found him. "Good boy," Lara murmured, wiping the rope away with the back of her glove. "You're free now." Leo didn't bolt. He didn't stand. He just leaned, subtly, slowly, against Harper's knee, as if he'd forgotten what it felt like to trust the ground beneath him. Harper knelt down without thinking. Her palm hovered, then gently rested on his shoulder. No flinch, no shift, just warmth. Lara stood and gave a small nod. "You calmed him. That matters more than you know." The room smelled like antiseptic and wet fur. Harper didn't care. All she could see was Leo's eyes, those deep, dark eyes that had once stared through her, now locked onto her like she was the only anchor he had. A young vet entered, clipboard in hand. Her badge read Doctor. Lin-Shi looked all of 25, but her face held the kind of calm that came from doing hard things often. "We'll get him on fluids," she said. "No sign of fractures, but he's severely dehydrated and underweight. We'll need to run some labs." Harper nodded. She didn't want to leave, not even for a minute. "Can I sit with him while you work?" Dr. Lin hesitated. "Normally we keep the intake space sterile, but—" Lara cut in. "Let her. He needs it." That settled it. They moved Leo gently to a padded floor mat in one of the side rooms, away from the barking kennels and echoing footsteps. It was quiet there, like a hospital waiting room made for the broken but not forgotten. Harper settled beside him, cross-legged, back against the wall. Leo curled slowly, almost gingerly, and rested his head near her knee. Every movement was cautious, as if he didn't know which parts of his body belonged to him anymore. "You don't have to be okay yet," she whispered. "I just need you to know you're not alone." He blinked. Once. Then his paw, scratched and caked with mud, reached out barely an inch and touched her boot. Not by accident. That's when Harper broke. Tears welled in her eyes, not loud, not shaking, just quiet warmth sliding down her cheeks. She didn't sob. She didn't want to make a sound that might undo him. She just sat there, hand resting lightly on his back, and let it happen. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to hold it all in. A knock came at the glass wall. Lara again. She slid the door, open but didn't step in. "We'll hold him for the 7-day claim period," she said. "Standard procedure, but..." Harper asked, bracing. "No chip, no tag, and no one's called in a report. You may be the only person who's even said his name." "Leo," Harper said, more to herself than to Lara. "His name is Leo." "You're welcome to visit him during the hold period," Lara added. "We'll add your name to his file." Harper looked down. Leo was already asleep, if lightly. His breath was steady now, not shallow. His body, though still tense, had begun to settle. "I'll be here," she said. "Good," Lara replied. "He's already chosen you anyway." Harper stayed in that room for over an hour. She didn't scroll her phone. She didn't call anyone. She didn't even think about the emails piling up in her inbox or the landscaping bid she was supposed to finalize by tonight. None of that mattered. Every few minutes, she looked at Leo's chest to make sure it was still rising. Every few minutes, he'd twitch, half dream, half memory, and she'd whisper to steady him. And slowly she felt something shift inside her. Not an epiphany, not yet, but a question forming in the corners of her mind, quiet and persistent. What if you were meant to find him? Later, as she stepped out of the room to stretch her legs, a staff member passed by holding a clipboard. "Hey," he said. You the one with the tree puppy? Harper blinked. Excuse me? The one from this morning, tied up in the park. Some of the volunteers have been calling him that. The tree puppy. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She just nodded. Yeah, she said quietly. That's him. And for the first time since her mother died, Harper Dawson felt her world shift, just slightly, toward something that wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something else. And Leo, the quiet little shadow with the steady eyes, was already in the middle of it. Harper hadn't planned on going back the very next day, but by the time the sun rose, her keys were already in her hand. The shelter opened at 9. She arrived at 8:45, standing by the locked glass door like a woman trying not to look desperate. A teenage volunteer glanced at her through the glass, then opened the door with a sympathetic smile. Leo? He asked without prompting. She nodded. Room 3. It became a routine, though she never called it that. Every morning she'd visit Leo. Some days she sat in silence. Some days she whispered to him about the world outside, the quiet of her apartment, the lemon tree just starting to bloom on her porch, the way no one had ever waited for her at the door. Leo didn't respond at first. He'd stay curled on his mat, eyes barely tracking her. No wag, no shift in breath, nothing but the faint movement of his chest. But he let her be near. Let her stay. And Harper did. She told no one. Not her co-workers. Not her sister Rachel, who would have pressed too hard or said something like, You? With a dog? It wasn't that she was ashamed. It just felt delicate, like speaking it out loud would make it less real. So she kept Leo tucked away, like a secret planted in the soft soil of her day. On day 3, he lifted his head when she walked in. On day 4, he inched closer when she sat beside him. And on day 5, something changed. Harper had barely stepped through the door when Leo looked up, blinked twice, and just once wagged his tail. Not fast, not excited, just enough to say, I remember you. It wrecked her. She sat down hard against the wall, swallowed the emotion rising in her throat, and whispered, Hey there, brave boy. You waited. He stood, wobbly, cautious, but deliberate. Then he crossed the short space between them and rested his head against her knee. She didn't speak for a while, just ran her hand along his back, feeling the warmth under fur that was finally starting to grow in again, soft over healing skin. He knows you now, Lara said from the doorway, voice low. It's not common, not this quick. Harper nodded. I know. They hadn't talked much since the intake. Lara had the kind of quiet that understood grief without probing. She stepped inside, crouched beside Leo, and gave him a soft scratch behind the ears. He's eating better, drinking on his own, still skittish with strangers, but not you. Harper kept her gaze on Leo. What happens after day 7? Lara sat back on her heels. If no one comes forward, he's cleared for foster or adoption. But we have to give it the full legal window, even if it feels like a formality. Anyone inquired yet? Number not a single call. That should have made her feel better. It didn't, because the wrong person asking for him was just as terrifying as no one asking at all. Later that night, Harper lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd brought home a copy of the intake form. It sat on her kitchen table like a contract with fate. Name: Leo intake date, April 12th age. Estimated 4 months. Notes found tied to tree. No microchip, no ID, no claimant. She kept reading that last line, no claimant, no one, which meant he had belonged to no one. Or worse, he had, and they'd chosen to disappear. Harper had always prided herself on being emotionally self-sufficient. She'd survived grief, abandonment, Silence. She didn't cry in movies, didn't melt at puppies in windows. But Leo had unraveled her, not with drama, but with stillness, with patience. With eyes that didn't plead, they simply stayed. On day 6, she arrived early again. Leo was already sitting up, watching the glass before she even opened the door. His tail thumped once, softly, against the floor. She knelt beside him, brushing her fingers through the thicker patches of fur near his neck. "I didn't think I'd feel this way," she said. "I didn't think I'd need this." He laid his head in her lap without hesitation. That night, Harper finally broke her silence. She called her sister. "Hey," she said when Rachel picked up. "We haven't talked in a while. You okay?" Harper hesitated. "I think I met someone." There was a pause. "Wait, what? Like a guy?" "No," Harper said and smiled. "He has 4 legs, and he changed everything." A long pause, then a breath of laughter. "Of course you found a dog before you found a man." Harper's smile didn't fade. "It's not like that." "Sounds exactly like that." "He was tied to a tree, Rachel." With a note, the other end of the line went quiet. "Oh. Yeah." The next morning would be day 7. She would be at the door the minute they opened. But as she got off the call and looked over at the folded copy of the note on her counter, creased, smudged, barely holding together, she whispered aloud for the first time, like testing the shape of a promise forming in her chest. "Hang in there, Leo. 1 more day, then you're coming home." And from somewhere deep inside, she felt it. The next time she opened her front door, someone would be waiting. Harper didn't sleep that night. She paced her apartment like a woman waiting for a verdict. Every clock tick, every passing car outside was a reminder that the next morning would change everything. She'd already cleaned the spare corner of her living room, laid out an old quilt, filled a stainless steel bowl with fresh water. There was no dog bed yet. She didn't want to jinx it, but she had bought a collar. Dark green, soft fabric, a small tag already engraved. "Leo, if found, call Harper Dawson." At 8:57 a.m., she was parked in front of the San Elmo Animal Rescue Center, gripping the steering wheel like it might float away if she let go. The building's familiar brick facade looked different today, less like a place of waiting and more like a finish line. Carla met her inside. Harper hadn't seen her before, older than Lara, dressed in business casual, clipboard in hand, the kind of person who looked like they managed spreadsheets more than animals. "You must be Harper," Carla said, smiling politely. "Let's go ahead and finalize the paperwork." The words made Harper feel like she could breathe for the first time in a week. She signed quickly, hand trembling, heart full. Carla handed over a slim folder, vaccination records, release documents, and one last intake note, scrawled in pen. No prior claims, cleared for placement. 10 minutes later, Leo was led out by one of the techs. Harper dropped to her knees the second she saw him. Leo didn't hesitate. He walked straight to her, leaned in, and pressed his head into her chest. Not cautious, not unsure. Home. "I've got you now," she whispered. "You're mine." They stepped out into the morning sun together, and Leo blinked hard at the light, then looked up at her as if to ask, "Is this real?" In the car, he curled up beside her on the seat, like he'd always belonged there. By the time they pulled into her driveway, Harper was already picturing the next week. Early walks, quiet evenings, maybe that first awkward bark when the mail truck showed up. But fate had a way of testing timing. At 10:11 a.m., just as Harper set Leo's bowl down and turned to sit beside him on the floor, there was a knock on the door. She froze. Through the peephole, she saw Carla. Confused, Harper opened the door. "Is something wrong?" Carla's expression had changed. still polite but tight around the edges. "I'm so sorry," she said. "There's been a procedural issue." Harper's stomach dropped. "We double-checked the intake system this morning, and because Leo wasn't physically brought in by a county officer, the mandatory holding period technically extends to day 8. Harper stared. "You're telling me he has to go back? After all that?" Carla nodded. "Legally, we need him at the facility for one more full business day. It's a protection clause. If someone were to claim him today and he wasn't in our custody, the county could be held liable." "He's been here a week. No one's called. No one's coming." "I know," Carla said gently. "But it's not about that. It's just the rule." Harper looked over her shoulder. Leo was standing by the hallway, head tilted, tail still, his eyes locked on her. He hadn't come closer, just watched like he already knew something was wrong. "I can't bring him back," Harper said. "He's just starting to feel safe." "I understand," Carla replied. "It's awful, but the law's the law." Harper dropped her voice. "Can I come with him? I'll stay the entire time, in whatever room you need. I can't let him think I left him again." Carla blinked, clearly taken off guard. "That's highly irregular. Please, he'll know. If I leave him again, even for a night, he'll feel it." There was a long pause. Finally, Carla gave a slow nod. "Let me make some calls." By 11 a.m., they were back at the shelter. This time, though, the staff had cleared a quiet observation room. No barking, no foot traffic. Just a blanket, a bowl of water, and space for two. Harper sat on the floor, back to the wall. Leo paced for a few minutes, then settled with a soft sigh and pressed his body to hers. "You're not going back in that kennel," she whispered. "We're doing this together." Hours passed. Emails came in. Calls went unanswered. Harper handled them from her phone, one hand always resting on Leo's back. A staff member brought her coffee. Another popped in to say they'd never had anyone request something like this before, but no one told her to leave. At one point, Carla returned to the glass. "He's incredibly calm with you," she said. "He's not calm," Harper replied. "He's just not afraid." Dusk crept in. The shelter dimmed. Shadows stretched across the floor. Leo lifted his head only once when a storm began outside. Distant thunder, wind against the windows. But Harper was already there, curling her arm around him, grounding them both. "You're going home tomorrow," she said. "That's a promise." And this time, she knew it wasn't just hope. It was truth. Harper had never realized how loud an empty house could be until that night. The ticking of the clock on the kitchen wall felt sharper. The creak of old floorboards under her own weight seemed to echo. Every sound was wrong. Too big, too hollow. The small space that had always been peaceful now felt exposed, like it was missing something essential. She tried to sleep. She made tea she didn't drink. She sat curled on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the space near the front door where she had imagined Leo would lie, just out of reach but always watching. But there was no rustle of fur, no soft exhale from a curled body. At 3:47 a.m., she stopped pretending. She got dressed, pulled on a hoodie, grabbed her keys. By 6:12 a.m., Harper was parked outside the San Elmo shelter, hands cradling a paper cup of coffee she barely sipped. The sun had just begun its slow crawl over the buildings, turning the sky a muted grey blue. Dew clung to the grass, and the pavement sparkled where the light touched it. She sat there, engine off, windows cracked, watching the door like someone waiting for an airport reunion that only she knew was happening. At 6:41, the first staff car pulled in. A few minutes later, Lara stepped out, spotted Harper, and gave a weary smile as she approached. "You beat us here," she said, rubbing her eyes. "I couldn't sleep." Lara nodded. "Come on, let's go get him." Inside, the shelter still smelled like bleach and kibble. The hallways were quiet. No barking yet, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the low shuffle of early morning prep. As they approached the isolation room, Harper's heart kicked harder. Her palms were sweating. It felt ridiculous. After all, she'd been here every day, but today was different. Today was permission. Final. Unconditional. Lara opened the door gently. Leo was curled up on the same blanket, head resting on his paws. He didn't move at first, but then he caught her scent. His ears twitched, his head lifted, and when he saw her standing there, silhouetted in the doorway, something in him lit. He stood, and then, for the first time since the day she found him, he ran. Not fast, not wild, but sure. Harper dropped to her knees just in time to catch him as he crashed into her chest. And then it happened. One single, sharp bark. Small, almost startled, like even he didn't know it was coming. But it was there. The sound broke the silence like a bell, echoing through the room with more weight than its size should have carried. Harper froze. Then she laughed, a short, tear-laced breath of joy. "Was that you?" she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. Leo's tail wagged furiously now, his body pressed against hers like he was trying to merge into her skin. Lara stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling. That's a good sign. Some dogs never vocalize again after trauma. But that... She motioned toward Leo, now licking Harper's chin like a boy who found home. "That bark says he's ready." Carla appeared minutes later with a new clipboard and the final adoption forms. This time, there were no caveats, no policy hiccups, no extra nights. "Officially yours," she said as she handed Harper the folder. Harper slipped the green collar from her coat pocket, fingers running over the metal tag. "Leo if found, call Harper Dawson." She clipped it gently around his neck, adjusting it with trembling hands. "You're coming home, baby," she whispered. For real this time. Outside, the morning had warmed. Leo padded across the gravel beside her, head high, tail gently swaying. He didn't pull, didn't hesitate. He walked beside her like he'd done it 100 times before. In the car, he hopped up onto the passenger seat without prompting and circled once before settling. But this time, he didn't curl tightly. He stretched, slowly, then laid his head on the center console, nose just inches from Harper's arm. She reached over and ran her fingers between his ears. "Can you believe it?" she whispered. "We made it." He blinked, then closed his eyes. The drive home was quiet, but not the empty kind. When they pulled into the driveway, Harper didn't rush to get out. She sat for a moment, looking at her front door. That same door that had once felt so heavy now looked like an invitation. She opened it slowly. Leo stepped through first. He didn't hesitate. He didn't sniff nervously. He walked in like he'd already memorized the place from dreams. Harper watched as he wandered briefly, then turned, padded back, and curled up in the exact spot she had imagined the night before, right by the front door, guarding her, belonging. He looked up, and Harper finally allowed herself to believe it. He wasn't the broken one anymore. He was hers, and this time, no one would take him away. Leo didn't explore the house like a typical puppy. There was no bounding from room to room, no crashing into table legs or toppling over water bowls. Instead, he moved with quiet calculation, soft paws padding from rug to tile, head low, ears tuned to every creak and hum of this new world. He sniffed, paused, then moved on. Each room was measured, observed, accepted. He never barked. He didn't whine. But he stayed close. Harper watched from the kitchen as he curled up in the narrow space between the couch and the coffee table, not hiding, just staying out of the way. Like he wasn't sure yet if he was allowed to take up space. She placed a blanket there. He didn't move. Later, when she settled on the couch with her tea, he stood, stretched long and low, and then, without a sound, curled up at her feet, just close enough that his back brushed against her ankles. It was that quiet presence, more than any bark or leap or wag, that settled something in Harper's chest. He wasn't trying to win her over. He already had. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Leo would rise when she did, tail giving one slow sweep as if to say, "Still here." He followed her from room to room, not anxiously, just watching, like he was keeping track of her. When she worked at the small desk in her studio, he would curl beneath it. When she folded laundry, he waited in the doorway, chin on paws. He was silent but never absent. At night he lay on the old quilt beside her bed. She would sometimes reach down with sleepy fingers, brushing the soft fur between his ears, and feel his tail tap once, twice, in response. It had only been 3 days, but Harper already felt the difference. Not in the noise, but in the quiet. This wasn't silence anymore. This was peace. On the 4th night, Harper did something she hadn't done in months. She called her sister. Rachel answered on the 2nd ring, her voice suspicious. "You okay?" "Yeah," Harper said. I wanted to tell you something." A pause. This wouldn't happen to be about a dog? Harper smiled. "His name's Leo. He's about 4 months old. German Shepherd mix, maybe. I found him tied to a tree last week." "Jesus," Rachel whispered. "You okay?" "I am now." Rachel let out a breath. "I figured something was up when you texted me out of the blue. You've been different since Mom." "I know," Harper said, the words thick. "I closed everything off. I thought it made me safe." There was silence on the other end. Then Rachel said, softly, "Safe isn't the same as alive." Harper blinked, heart suddenly pounding. "I think Leo knew," she said, "before I did." That night, as Harper ended the call and turned off the lights, Leo walked over to her side of the bed and waited, just stood there looking up. She patted the mattress. He jumped up, tentative at first, then curled himself into the curve of her legs like it was the most natural thing in the world. Harper lay back, hand resting on his back, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. "I wasn't planning on this," she whispered into the dark. Leo shifted closer, and for the first time in years, Harper felt what it was to be waited for, to be welcomed home, not by noise, not by need, but by loyalty and love. The first crack of thunder rolled across the sky just after midnight. Harper had been dozing lightly, the kind of half-sleep that still listens for footsteps or creaks in the dark. Rain hit the windows in sheets, carried by wind that whistled through the gaps in the frame. She blinked herself awake and reached instinctively toward the floor, where Leo usually slept, curled neatly on the old quilt. But the space was empty. She sat up, heart quickening. "Leo." No sound, no soft tail thump, no sleepy shuffle. Lightning flashed, and in its brief blue glow, she saw the hallway. Empty. Harper threw the blanket aside and got up. She checked the living room, then the kitchen. No Leo. "Leo." Her voice was quiet, but urgent now. The next flash of lightning lit the laundry room door. It was open. She stepped inside and found him. Leo was wedged into the farthest corner, pressed tight between the dryer and the wall, trembling so hard she could hear his claws rattle against the tile. His ears were flat, his body taut like a coiled spring, eyes wide and unseeing. He didn't even look at her. He was somewhere else entirely. "Hey," Harper whispered, crouching low. "It's okay, baby. You're safe." But he didn't believe her. Not yet. She reached toward him. Slow and open-palmed, he flinched, and that's when she understood. This wasn't fear of thunder. It was memory, the wind, the pounding rain, the sense of being alone in a world that had turned cold. Harper pictured that tree again, the frayed rope, the soaked fur, the note flapping in the storm. It had probably rained the day he was left. Maybe that's when the rope was tied for the last time. This wasn't about the weather. It was about being abandoned in it. Harper didn't say anything else. She didn't try to coax him out. She crawled into the corner with him. It took effort. Her shoulder scraped the wall, and the floor was cold. But she folded herself down beside him, chest to his side, her arms gently circling around his shaking frame. She didn't squeeze, just held him. "I'm not leaving," she murmured. "Not now, not ever." He kept shaking, breath short and fast, his entire body locked. Harper stayed. Minutes passed, and the storm raged on. But slowly something shifted. Leo's breath began to slow. His head dropped, first against her arm, then lower. His tail twitched, not in alarm this time, but in release. His muscles, once hard as stone, softened under her hands. He exhaled, long and low. Then, for the first time, he tucked his face against her chest and slept. Harper didn't move. Her legs had gone numb, her back ached from the angle. But she didn't care. This was the moment she hadn't known she was waiting for. Leo wasn't curled up on her floor anymore. He was here, trusting her with the part of himself that had never known safety, the part that remembered the rain. She ran her fingers slowly down his back, feeling the weight of him settle into her. Outside, the storm began to quiet. The thunder moved farther away. Rain turned to a gentle patter against the windows. In the stillness, she whispered into the top of his head. "You're safe now, I swear, and somewhere, in the space between memory and healing, that promise settled in deep. Not just for Leo, but for her too." The park was quieter than Harper remembered. It was early morning, the air still cool and laced with the smell of dew-drenched grass. The city hadn't fully woken up yet, just a few joggers in the distance, a couple walking a baby stroller near the lake trail, and the occasional chirp of birds reclaiming their branches. Harper stood at the edge of the trail, one hand loosely gripping Leo's leash. He was calm beside her, not pulling, not tense, just watching the world with the steady eyes of someone who had seen enough chaos to know how to appreciate quiet. She took a slow breath. "This is it," she said softly, more to herself than to him. Leo didn't move. They crossed the grass together, weaving between the same trees Harper had run past 100 times without seeing. It wasn't until she reached the familiar curve in the path that she stopped. The oak tree still stood, strong and silent. There was no sign of what had happened beneath it, no rope, no packing tape, no hint of the note that had changed everything. Harper knelt and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a laminated sheet, creased but preserved. The original note had been scanned, printed, and sealed. Not to erase the pain it held, but to honor it. "His name is Leo. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people." Below it, in new ink, Harper had added her own line. "He found a home, and he is deeply, deeply loved." She placed the note gently at the base of the tree. Leo stepped forward, his nose twitching as he sniffed at the bark. He didn't seem afraid. Not anymore. Instead, he stood still for a moment, then leaned in and gave the tree one slow nudge with his muzzle, like a quiet acknowledgement of the past. Then he turned and wagged his tail. Not frantic, not nervous, just one soft, measured sweep, as if to say, "We're done here." Harper crouched beside him, her hand resting on his back. "You came full circle," she whispered. And this time, you left on your own terms." They stayed there for a while, long enough for the sun to crest over the tops of the trees and spill golden light across the grass, long enough for Harper to feel the weight of what they'd both carried, his fear, her loneliness, settle into something more manageable. Healing wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. Sometimes it came in the form of a dog standing quietly beside the place he was once abandoned, letting it go without needing to be told how. Harper rose, brushing the damp from her knees. She looked at the tree one last time, then back at Leo. "You ready?" Leo took one step forward, looked up at her, and gave a faint, almost imperceptible bark. She smiled. They walked away together, the leash light in her hand, the space between them filled with something better than words. Trust. By the time they reached the edge of the park, people were beginning to fill the paths. Parents with toddlers, couples with coffee, dogs tugging impatiently at their leads. But Harper and Leo didn't rush. They walked like they had nowhere else to be. Because for once they didn't. Not all stories need a dramatic ending. Some just need to be reclaimed. And on that patch of grass under that old oak tree, a forgotten note had found its meaning. The community center buzzed with soft chatter and the rhythmic shuffle of paws against polished floors. Balloons bobbed at every table, and booths lined the perimeter, each one promoting adoption, local shelters, and stories of dogs who had once been lost but were now found. Harper stood near a folding table covered in laminated photos of adoptable pups. A banner overhead read, "Second Chances, Stronger Bonds." To her left, a water bowl sat next to a worn blanket. And on that blanket, stretched out in a beam of sun pouring through the window, lay Leo. He was larger now, his frame strong and his coat thick, the colors of storm clouds and dusk. But the softness in his eyes hadn't changed. He'd gone from shadow to sunlight, and he wore it well. People stopped to admire him all morning. Some bent down to pet him, others asked questions about his breed, his diet, how she trained him to be so calm. Harper answered them all with a quiet pride she hadn't known she could carry a year ago. And then, just before noon, a little girl in a yellow raincoat approached the table. Her curly hair bounced as she walked, and she held a half-eaten cookie in one hand. "Is he yours?" she asked, pointing at Leo. "He is," Harper said with a smile. The girl tilted her head. "Did you rescue him?" Harper crouched down. "Sort of, but I think he rescued me too." The girl looked down at Leo, who opened one eye, gave a slow blink, then went back to sleep. After a long pause, the girl asked, "Do you think he remembers the tree?" Harper's breath caught for a moment. She looked at Leo, sprawled in perfect peace, the slow rise and fall of his chest steady as the tide. Then she smiled. "He doesn't need to," she said softly, "because now he remembers love." The girl nodded solemnly, then walked back to her parents. Harper stayed crouched, her hand resting on Leo's back. She thought of that first day, the rope, the silence, the note, the way he'd flinched from kindness and melted under patience, the way her life had folded itself around him without her even asking it to. She thought of the nights on the floor, the quiet mornings with 2 mugs of tea and one untouched, of the laundry room storm, of the moment Leo barked and the world shifted on its axis. And she thought about the note she'd placed under the tree, now laminated and kept in her drawer. He found a home, and he is deeply, deeply loved. That love hadn't faded. It had grown. It lived in the way Leo nudged her knee when she got too quiet, in the way he sat by the door before she even picked up her keys, in the way his eyes found hers in a crowd and didn't need words to feel safe. Harper stood and looked around the room. People milled past with dogs of every size and age, stories unfolding in real time. Some dogs newly rescued, trembling in vests marked "in training." Others settled in like they'd been with their humans for decades. All of them had something in common. They had been chosen. They had been seen. And many, just like Leo, had survived things no human could fully understand. But they didn't need pity. They needed presence. Harper glanced down. Leo lifted his head, leaned slightly into her leg, and sighed. Still here. Still hers. She turned to the small camera crew from the local animal network, already capturing footage of the event. The producer gave her a nod. They'd be live in a few seconds. Harper smoothed her shirt, crouched beside Leo, and looked straight into the lens. "This is Leo," she said. "1 year ago he was left tied to a tree with a note. No chip, no collar, just a message that said, 'Please be kind.' And today, he's changed my life more than I ever thought possible." She smiled down at him. "We share this story not because it's sad, but because it's real. And because there are thousands of dogs like Leo still waiting, still hoping, still deserving." The camera zoomed in as Leo raised his head again, calm and proud. "So," Harper said, her voice soft but clear, "what's your story with a loyal pet?" She looked into the camera one last time. "And if you believe in second chances, in healing, and in the quiet kind of love that shows up and stays, then support your local shelters. Volunteer. Adopt. And follow our journey with Leo and others like him here on the German Shepherd channel." Leo let out a quiet huff, almost on cue. Harper laughed gently and rubbed between his ears. "Sometimes," she said, "the ones we rescue end up rescuing us right back." And as the screen faded to black, Leo rested his head back on his paws, safe, home, and never forgotten.